Hi, welcome back to another episode of Tuba People TV, where we talk about Arnold Jacobs all of the time. Puddles and I are in downtown Atlanta with my old friend Richard Brady. Richard, it's so great to see you.
Yeah, man. It's good to see you as well.
We are here at the Westminster Schools. Thank you for hosting us here and supplying this great location. And Richard was telling me on the way in that this school was actually the place where much of The Blind Side, the movie The Blind Side, was filmed.
Absolutely.
So Puddles and I are looking forward to going out and seeing some of the sites on campus. But for those of you who don't know Richard is the bass trombonist with the Atlanta Opera, long time.
Yeah.
Bass trombonist with the Atlanta Ballet, long time. Columbus Symphony bass trombonist here in Columbus, for a long time. here in Georgia, and for many years, regular substitute with the Atlanta Symphony on bass trombone and other things. But we first met back in 1986 when I joined the Savannah Symphony, and he was the regular bass trombonist with the Savannah Symphony, and that was a long time. But even before that, I think it was 1981.
Yes.
My colleagues from the Portland Youth Philharmonic, we were the brass quintet for the Spoleto USA Festival. And so we were doing our thing as the brass quintet, but then we went and heard the very wonderful opera Lady Macbeth of Mintz by Shostakovich, and Richard was in that very memorable low brass section with Peter Olharfdick and Don Gardo.
Yeah, Don Gardo.
And it was so unbelievably loud. To me, it's to this day is the highest loud meter. Maybe even including the Chicago Symphony, but certainly it was just so loud. Low brass was incredible.
It was brutally loud.
Yeah, it was so loud they had to tear down Gilliard Auditorium eventually. So.
Yeah, we did major structural damage to the building.
Exactly. Studied here in Atlanta. Initially, as we were talking a bit with Harry Maddox, you were putting into his studio at. But along the way, you had some studies with Mr. Kleinhammer, but also Mr. Jacobs.
Right.
I'm just wondering if you can recall for us that initial set of lessons that you had with Jay.
It was a scary thing because here I was looking at one of my top idols in the entire universe, listening to recordings, pictures at an exhibition with Reiner, which is, I still use that as a reference point today. And I was really nervous. I mean, I was incredibly nervous because here is my idol, and I'm getting ready to play for him. And when I sat down and he started talking to me, he made me feel so at ease. And he listened to me and just started telling me what I was doing wrong. But he was doing it in such a sweet way. There's no way of describing how he would put you at ease instantly and make you feel like you were his long lost cousin and make you feel like you were right at home, which was really fun because he made it into a fun lesson. It was really fun. It wasn't just meeting Arnold Jacobs. It was a fun lesson. I had a great time.
Yeah, so it wasn't just all bad. He was giving you solutions and paths to
exactly
make things better.
But later on, it was bad when he would tell me that he would say, he would tell me lessons after that. He would say, no, you're doing this wrong. You need to fix this. You need to fix that. You're being lazy,
Sure.
and which was true. And as we all know, we get lazy occasionally, and we need to go back and find our roots and get back to where we were.
Do you remember that in the first, a long time ago, I know, so maybe the memory is a little bit hazy, but do you remember anything in particular that he helped you with or made you sound better with? Or
Well, I had been studying with Harry, and Harry was a long-time student of Jacobs, and Harry would help me. And then I was in school at the time with Charlie Vernon, and so Charlie, I had also been studying with Jacobs, and so I kind of had an idea of what I needed to hear. And so I walked in the door and was totally blown away by the fact that he didn't teach me the way that Harry and Charlie had talked to me. It was a totally new approach, and he talked to me about breathing. I had really large lungs. I had 6.8 liters at the time, and he made me realize it didn't matter how much air you had, it's how you use the air. And I was really extremely extremely inefficient in the way I was breathing, even though I'd studied with these other monsters, that he was saying that I need to better regulate my air and better regulate the intake and the outflow. And he talked to me about how to utilize and gauge air and get more air in. And when he was talking to me, he would sit there and he'd say, no, don't do it like that. He would say, do it like this. And he had me, whistle backwards and, make the air work. And that was extremely mind-boggling, because I thought that I knew how to breathe, and then didn't realize that no, I didn't know how to breathe. That he made me know how to breathe, and that's what I loved about Jacobs, was he could tell you how to make you work, not just everybody, but you. And that's what he individualized all of his lessons to his students, and that was marvelous. What a great mind.
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, you went back for other lessons.
A lot.
Do you remember any particular things that, big important items that come to mind in terms of how he helped you, or what he did to improve you?
I was playing a lot of Broadway musicals at the time. I was doing probably 20, 30 weeks a year of shows, playing also with Savannah and doing all that, and then playing with the Atlanta Symphony. And I developed a mind, for lack of a better word, mind fart. And I couldn't play. I mean, I could always play a high E flat above high B flat, easy. I could play the Rhenish, no problem, even on my big bass. And I couldn't play a high A flat. It just wouldn't come out. I'd start working on a row shoe, and it goes up to high A flat, and it would sound like dog squeeze. And so I had a lesson with Kleinhammer, and I said, I've got to go to Chicago and fix this. So I had a week off from shows. So I drove and stayed at Jeff Taylor's house, another good friend.
Hey, Jeff.
And stayed at his house, and I made his wife mad because I played a French horn solo on my trombone, and she thought I'd actually picked up her horn. And played and so I played that. But anyway, so Kleinhammer came over and he gave me a 3-hour lesson, and he really couldn't help me fix the problem that I was having. I couldn't play in the upper register. And so I had scheduled a lesson with Jacobs that very next day, and so I drove into town, and I'm sitting in his office, and he starts doing this weird stuff. Okay, play this. Okay, do this. Do this. You need here, pick this up. And he put a piece of paper in front of me and said, now play this. And I went up to a high B flat, and I did, and it was like, wait a minute, I can't play a high A flat yet. You just had me play a high B flat. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. And it's like he got my mind off of my brain damage, and said, you can do this, you can't think about it, you just have to do it, you just have to just sing it and make it work. And it worked. And he said, it's going to, a couple weeks, he says, it's going to take about 3 or 4 months, and you'll get your playing back, and so long as you keep this going. And I went back to Jeff's house, and I couldn't play the high A flat again, and because it just, the whole process takes time. It was like 2 or 3 weeks later, I was playing high E flats again without any effort. And I really feel he saved my career, because if I couldn't play a high B flat and here I was playing lead trombone on shows, I'd be toast. So it was pretty great. What a great man.
Yeah, that's amazing. Richard, I remember interviewing Harold Van Skyke down in Florida. Hey, Harold. And he had a similar, he described a similar lesson where Jacobs was trying to confuse him, really confuse his mind, so as not to be really focused on the problem, but it was just so confused that the truth came out. The note came out.
Right.
And so I remember Harold talking about, okay, now play it. Okay, now sing it. Okay, now buzz it. All right, now sing it. Now play it. Now buzz it. And just, he did this for a little bit, and then, was that something similar?
It was exactly the same thing. Jacobs had, Jacobs' whole process of thinking about singing what you're doing when you're performing, and always singing, and just singing right there. When you're buzzing, when you're playing your instrument, you sing it at the exact same time that you play it, and so therefore your mind won't mess you up. And my mind was messing me up. So he had me buzz, and then he'd say, okay, here, and I had my cutaway at the time, and I put the cutaway in. He'd say, now play this, and then he had me take a big breath and buzz a note, and then he had me take a big breath and he had me play this one lick and do some glissandos and stuff, and then he said, okay, and buzzing it again, and he put the piece of paper in front of me, and then he says, okay, now play this, and I went da da da, because it was sight reading. I went da 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 da, and I was like, wait a minute, what just happened? And so he was distracting my stupidity and making me just be smart again, and I think that's what he did.
Yeah, that's great. And then I remember you telling me earlier about after he had passed away, you had this experience, an unfortunate dental experience.
I had to have one of my old fillings taken out. It had mercury in it, and so the dentist needed to take that out. So he said, I'm going to give you Novocaine. So he gave me Novocaine, drilled it out, and he put in a new filling, and that was the end of it. So I was, at the time, there was the principal trombone player in the Atlanta Opera, Mark McConnell, and I we'd mess around before performances, and I started playing the Rhenish, and I would always play lead on it, and da-dee-da-dee-da-da, and I couldn't play the E flat. I'm like, wow, that's really weird. I always can play the E flat. And then a couple of days later, I couldn't play a high C, then a high B flat, then an A flat, and a G. And it was like my upper register, and then I started feeling the side of my face, and I looked, and it was like sagging. And I said, oh my gosh, I got, Bell palsy or something. And then I went to one of my computer clients, because I ran a computer company, and he said, he just nicked one of your cranial nerves. It'll be back in 6 weeks. I said, but I've got to play the Franck D Minor Symphony in 3 weeks. It's like, this is what I do. And he said, it's going to take 6 weeks. It'll be back, but it's going to take 6 weeks. And so I was panicked. I had Brevard coming up. I was sitting at my house, and I was talking to my wife's mom, who was a French horn player. And she was very helpful in trying to get my brain in gear, but I said, what I need to do is I need to go back and think about my roots. So I remember Jacobs taking his mouthpiece and putting it on the right side of his face and buzzing for a second, and then on the left side of his face and then buzzing for a second, and putting it in his instrument, and then going, and then putting it over here, and I'm going, holy, it was like, this guy can play. And so I decided that I was going to try that and relearn how to play the instrument, because I didn't have 6 weeks. I had to play the Franck D Minor, and that's a big solo for bass trombone. Mm-hmm. So I learned how to play on this side of my face, put this finger right here, and 2 weeks later I'm playing the Franck D Minor, and I nailed it. It was great. And I was sitting there going, oh my gosh. And about 2 weeks after that, I started getting the feeling again in my face. And so I started moving it right back, and I decided I was going to relearn how to play correctly, and I was going to get rid of this little off-center thing that I did, and I play right in the center of my face. So I relearned how to play twice, but it was because of Jacobs and knowing what Jacobs did and how Jacobs played that really kept me from just falling apart. I mean, I was really scared. I was just, we all get scared when we have stuff like that come up, and it was, your body changes, or your teeth change, or your jaws change, air, I wish I had air like I had 30 years ago, because we don't. And
it goes away.
Yeah, it goes away, and then, the changes in our embouchures and stuff, but every time I go through a change, and things kind of feel funky, I sit back and I think, okay, what would Arnold Jacobs say? And I just reanalyze what I'm doing here, and I say, this is what he would say to me. This is how he would yell at me. And I would fix it. It would be fixed. And, I was thinking last night when we were playing West Side Story last night, and it goes up to high C's and high B flats, and I'm just sitting there nailing those things. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is very cool. And it was because of Arnold Jacobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. There's many clips of him, or at least one or two really famous clips with him buzzing here and buzzing here and buzzing here, and then doing his thing, the crazy thing with his lips, where he would, I can't do it, but he would do this X thing with his lips and then buzz, and And it's just, and the point was, it's not about the meat, it's about the music and getting the music. If it doesn't sound good here, try it over here.
Yeah.
If it doesn't sound good here, try it over there. It's not so much about the embouchure, it is about the music. So yeah, that's a great story.
And using his of course we can't. I can't stress enough how I feel about the way that Jacobs tailored everything to me, and he tailors everything to every person. And when I'm teaching my students, and my job now is basically repairing people. When I get students that come to me, they say, I can't do this anymore, I'm having problems, and I help them to fix themselves and to play better and to get their careers back. And I totally am thankful that Jacobs gave me the knowledge that I can work with to help these people out, because as I get into my late 60s, it's getting.
You're not your late 60s.
I'm 67 years old, man.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I'm 67 years old, man.
Let me think. Now that makes me. Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe you are. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you're looking great.
Thanks. I feel good.
Yeah.
Feel good. You do too, man. You look fantastic.
I think the point they make about Jacobs teaching teaching the individual is so right on, and the sort of the dirty little secret about the Jacobs method is that there is no Jacobs method. It was, other than the pillars, song and wind. How he got us there was really based upon how we communicated, and he would spend the first few minutes of the lessons just communicating with you to determine, sort of a triage way to determine how you communicate and what your interests are, what turns you on, and in so doing, he's collecting data to figure out how to get in your mind to take you where you are and then lead you on the journey, rather than telling you must do this, shouting at you over the chasm, rather than meeting you and bringing you along.
I remember, and don't get me wrong, William H. Hill was just a marvelous teacher. But his idea was that he thought that everybody played the exact same. And so John Coffey had taught him how to play this one particular way, and he thought that was the way you had to play. And that was, unfortunately, didn't work for somebody that had an overbite or any other kind of anything else that was wrong. And so it wouldn't work for certain people. And I remember how Jacobs tailored every subtlety of your embouchure, of your air, of your wind, to make you play perfectly with what you had.
What you had, yeah.
He wouldn't allow you to. He wouldn't allow himself just to be, this is the way it is. He didn't. He said, this is the way it is for you.
Exactly.
Which is the perfect way to teach.
It is. Yeah, so Richard, I think this whole idea of really treating the individual as the individual, and not, we do have different facial structures, and as you age, your teeth change and whatnot. But I remember him telling a story about a band director in Indiana who, this would have been, I think, in the late 60s or maybe in the early 70s, maybe the mid 70s. Maynard Ferguson was really a hot commodity then, and he made the high school circuit. I remember seeing him for the first time at a high school in the Portland area. Anyway, so Maynard came through, was playing all this amazing stuff really high, and the band director was thinking, well, what makes Maynard so special? He noticed that Maynard had a gap in between his two front teeth. So he had his trumpet players go to the dentist. Somehow he got the parental permission to go to the dentist and put a gap in their teeth, thinking that would help. And then a year or two later, Maynard came back, and he had been to the dentist too. He had the gap filled in. So that just, Jacobs, I remember him telling me that story, just in terms of, it's not the meat, it's the music, and that's the main thing. And I know that with regard to the music, we all have many orchestra hall stories and experiences. I'm sure you have one or two that come to mind with the CSO.
The one that really, they came to Atlanta, of course, did a concert here, and they did Mahler 1, and it was like, at the Fox Theater, which was unfortunate because that's not the greatest musical hall in the world, but it was just awesome. It was just awesome to hear them play there. But I think my favorite was listening to Symphony Fantastic in Orchestra Hall in Chicago, and Kleinhammer got me tickets, and I was sitting up in the balcony area right above them, and they were playing the last of that piece, and it was like 11 seconds of holding that last note, and I'm sitting there saying, oh no, that's just as loud as I've ever heard in my life. No, they can't possibly. And at the very end, they crescendo. And I'm sitting there, and I just floored. I mean, it was like, and then Jacobs kind of put down his horn, audience starts applauding crazily, and he looks up and smiles. With that smile he has. And it was just awesome. They were just ridiculous. How they could hold a note that loud, and it really wasn't that loud because they were controlling it, but because the section was so perfect, it sounded twice as loud as it would have been anywhere else in the world. And then the last 4 seconds they crescendoed, and it was like, and that's where I wanted to be. That's how I wanted to play. I mean, it's that's the pinnacle of what a low brass section or brass section should sound like. It really is. I mean, that was perfection.
Wow, that's a great story, and I'm so thankful for you to take the time out of your day to
my pleasure.
Come meet me at the airport, bring me here, Puddles too, and just recount these memories. And I'm thinking about 1981, hearing you down in Charleston. I'm thinking about when we got to play together for the first time in 1986, and then at Brevard for several summers, and
we had some really good times.
Yeah,
we played some really good music and had such a blast doing it.
It's great to see you again.
Really good to see you.
Puddles, I won't leave you hanging. Puddles wanted me to make sure and give you this lovely collector's edition Tuba People TV pint-sized glass for your...
Thank you so much. This will be used this evening with some Cold Mountain Winter Ale.
Okay. That sounds great. Yeah.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
It's really great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for everything.
You're quite welcome.
And now back to you.